I'll go ahead and get going. By the way, those of you might want to put your phone on mute. On one of these calls, it was kind of interesting. One of the reps was working out his house, and his daughter came in and said, "Daddy, where's my lunch?" And everybody kind of chimed in and said, "Come on, man, feed your daughter some lunch." So it was pretty funny. But so you might want to put your phone on mute, and then all the rest of us don't hear your background. But again, thanks for joining. This is Jim Bretman with Jim Myers & Sons, and I'm going to be spending about 20, probably closer to 30 minutes max, including questions, to explain our Delta-SKIMMER product line to you. Start with a short PowerPoint presentation, and then I'd like to briefly show you the tools we've got to help you do your thing, and then answer any questions you've got. The goal of this session is so that you guys will feel good that you've got the fundamental knowledge needed to know if this equipment is a good fit for you for a particular project, and to know some of the tools you've got available to you to use. And something else I'd like to do as I go through it is to try to address several successes we've had, to try to offer some of the challenges we face in this evolving market, and some of the things that differentiate ourselves, discussion about the competition, things that I like to think will help you in your efforts. With that said, so what you're looking at is a screen with all our Delta-SKIMMER product line, the scum pipes, the helical skimmers, and the paddle wheel skimmers. I'll be addressing all three of them today. The most common Delta-SKIMMER product, and I'm preaching to the choir, I know that, is the scum pipe, the rotating scum pipe. Used about 90% or 95% of the time. The other 5% are helical and paddle wheel skimmers. So I'm going to roll right in and talk a little bit about the scum pipe. The scum pipe is used for common surface skimming systems. It's typically a batch or intermittent use application. We offer scum pipes in various materials of construction. The most common by far is stainless steel. That's particularly got value because carbon steel, by the time we sandblast, paint, ship, scratched up, field touch up, etc., it approaches the price of stainless steel. Of course, we're having some interesting stuff going on with the tariffs that I know all of you are certainly familiar with, that's very active with stainless steel. The difference between carbon and stainless may change, perhaps temporarily, but that's all quite a bit of an unknown right now. We're kind of in the midst of it. We certainly can provide fiberglass as well with UV protection. Of course, the fiberglass pipes are a buyout for us, but then everything else with a fiberglass system, everything except the pipe itself is just like a stainless steel system. The end bearings are stainless steel, everything else is stainless steel, so except the pipe itself. The most common diameters are 12 inch to 16 inches, and the diameters are driven by a number of factors. They can be driven by the width of the basin. Most commonly, they're driven by the change in water elevation from minimum to maximum throughout a day. The greater that delta in elevation or in change in water elevation, the greater that the diameter of the scum pipe needs to be in order to accommodate that change. Typically, scum pipes rotate both directions because inevitably scum accumulates behind the scum pipe as well. So you want to be able to, again, on a batch or intermittent basis, be able to collect the scum behind. You're looking at several applications we've got out there in the field. You've got electric actuated systems with electric actuators. Typically, we recommend, and we're married at the hip OEM basis with Rotork and Limitork, Rotork MX and Rotork IQ actuators. But we can provide any type actuator that a particular plant might need. We can certainly handle that. Of course, the actuators include integral limit switches, controls, motor starters are included in the actuators, and we can include a mod bus, Profibus, field bus, whatever is needed to communicate with the SCADA system at a particular plant. The electric actuators have a manual hand wheel backup too, in all cases. In case there are any electrical issues, you can pop a clutch and operate them manually. There is, of course, the very simple manual lever operated in the upper right corner here. It's just your simple lever operation. In the lower left corner, you can see, let me see, this is in Gurnee, Illinois, in the lower left. It's a little difficult to see, but that's your basic hand wheel operation, top mount. We can also provide a side mount operation. You see how it's mounted to the basin wall here? That's one method. We can also provide stands that penetrate and where the stems go through a hole in the walkway. So this is just one of many different mounting methods that's employed. As far as the drive system, the worm gear and rack system, which you're seeing right in the upper left corner, the worm gear and rack system is by far the most common operating method. But again, the lever is certainly out there, but it's just pretty rare when I'm quoting a lever anymore. The other method that has become more popular, particularly with larger diameters, is the chain and sprocket down in the lower right corner. Interesting design. You got a gear reducer, chain and sprocket obviously, to the pipe below with stainless steel chain, gear reducer, adapter, and electric actuator on the top. So this has been used, again, I feel like we're the leader in the industry for this application. I'll be talking about that a little bit more here. Is if you can envision this rendering, the scum pipe itself has been removed, and the scum pipe obviously goes from like 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and it's been removed just so you can get a visual of this. Also, right here, you can see this stem sticking up. If you can just envision a stainless steel pipe shaft going vertically up to the stand above with the hand wheel. Otherwise, this is an end-bearing assembly on the operating end, and you can see the worm gear is here. The blue is the worm gear, and this is a cantilevered support structure for the worm gear that can be adjusted in any direction, which is important. And when we work on specs, we make sure all of this gets in the specs to put us in a better advantage compared to the competition, because some of the comp doesn't do this. But so the worm gear can be adjusted because engagement is going to change over the life of the system, and so we can adjust as we move forward without having to remove the pipe. And here you can see a UHMW bearing ring, 2 packing glands, and then a backing ring and a follower angle ring here as well. And these are all, this system is adjustable, which is important. It's also, you can replace these packing glands without having to remove the pipe, which is also important. We've even gotten a change here, and I have failed to make this change yet, but this little backing ring is now tack welded to the back of this follower angle ring. This is an angle. And the reason is when you're out there in the field and you're wanting to replace this packing, once you take this follower angle ring off, the backing ring is just a pain in the neck to get it out because it's been pinned up against this packing gland. So now we tack it to the back of this follower ring, so it comes out with the follower ring, and it's much easier. Having provided these things over the last 25, 30 years, we've learned a lot, from ourselves over time, and made improvements as we've moved forward. Oh, but I did want to mention, these systems are water lubricated. No grease is required for these systems, for these assemblies, importantly. And something that people don't pick up on, and I share with engineers, and I think we as a team, use a rep, us as a manufacturer, we gain credibility with engineers when we're working through the specs, is a lot of folks don't know that if you do, some engineers say, I want grease anyway. Okay, but you need to use a food-grade grease. You do not want to use a petroleum-grade grease. And why is that? That's because the UHMW is a petroleum product as well. So if you use regular grease, you're going to degrade. That UHMW bearing is going to degrade quicker than it would otherwise. A little bit about, this is Deer Island, our largest, just a little spotlight information. We worked this project with the designers, with the engineering firm. It was FST, Faith, Spofford, and Thorndike. Worked with them for over a year and a half on our large, actually this is the largest project Jim Myers & Sons has ever done. It's a $7.5 million scum pipe project. So all of these primary and secondary clarifiers that you see, I'm trying to circle around, all of those have over 500 tons of steel of scum pipes. They used the chain and sprocket method, by the way, that I showed you earlier with the electric actuator. They were extremely sensitive. Deer Island was having issues with their scum pipes, jamming, etc., for 20 plus years, and they were trying over and over to try to figure out a way to do it, building prototypes here and there, very sensitive to what would be done and who would do it. So it says a lot for us to get that job. In fact, we were underbid by, I won't mention by whom, by $1 million, and still got the job, because the contractors that were bidding the work just did not want to take that kind of risk. And again, I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know all about that play. But I found that interesting, that even with that order of magnitude and difference, they still went with us. And that job was finished in 2.5 years, a year less than projected. So under time frame, under budget, and we've got this guy as a reference. They're very pleased with our work, and not only our equipment, but with our service team, our field service team as well. So we're very proud of that project, and I share that with you we use that often, and we've got others as well, installation lists. We use it often to help us gain a better position and with engineers in the specs as we work through developing the specs. I think you can see the strengths. I've kind of talked about them as we've gone through this. We do believe we're the industry leader. I don't even think it's an opinion anymore, but JMS is the industry leader in the municipal arena, and that's all we do. We do very little industrial work. We do very, very little OEM work. We're very supportive of our rep team, so we're very focused, and this is what we do. Certainly competitive pricing. We've got thousands of these things in operation. We've got a drawing library that's very extensive. If you guys get me involved early in the spec review process, I can typically get CAD drawings to the engineer that'll be the right size diameter, close to the right length, and with the operating system that he chooses. It's pretty odd that I can't get some pretty, they're not job specific, although we will provide job specific drawings if we can get sole sourced or base bid. You know, we just have to be in a very advantageous position because we just don't have the resources to do that in a typical DBB job. But we do have a very extensive library to assist. I think the challenge with scum pipes is you've got competitors out there that are trying to include the scum pipes with the chain and flights. And I realize I'm preaching to the choir. What we try to do is, with your efforts, our efforts, is try to get specs that are separate for the scum pipes. And certainly as the order of magnitude increases, we believe this is an advantage to the owner to have the scum pipes as a separate spec. And then we marry our scum pipes in that spec up with your chain and flight systems. So the point of that story is we try to break the specs out, the scum pipes in a separate spec. And while doing that, of course, our mission to try to be the basis of bid, sole source is tough, but trying to be the basis of bid, we're finding is becoming less of a challenge. It's occurring more often now that we have developed our name and recognition in the scum pipe arena. It seems like we're #1 named in basis more often than we were 5 years ago. I'm going to zip through very quickly the others, the helical skimmers and the paddle wheel skimmers. They're a little different than the scum pipes in that they're kind of hard to see in these renderings, but I'll show you pictures here in a second. But they are, again, I'm going to say 5 out of 100 systems, 5 will be helical or paddle wheel, and 95 will be scum pipes. But so it's kind of a market demand thing as much as it is anything else. But these paddle wheel and helical skimmers are different from scum pipes, and they're typically continuous operation, and they typically are for applications that have a greater quantity of scum, or the rate of development of scum is great enough that helps warrant continuous operation in these systems. They're typically 16, 18-inch diameter, typically stainless steel, although we can provide fiberglass as well. They are 360-degree rotation, and you can see how the systems just rotate 360 degrees, pull the scum and up over the trough, the beach rather, and into a trough. We can provide, up in the top photo, you can see a paddle wheel. That's a straight paddle wheel skimmer that has a beach that we provide, and then it's a concrete trough that accepts the material after it's conveyed over the top of the beach. But we do provide the whole systems, beaches and troughs and skimmers tied in. We do that often. The helical and paddle wheel skimmers, usually the change in elevation in water is about 2 inches or less. We can use larger diameter systems for basins that have a change in water up to about 4 inches or so, but after it gets that much change in water elevation, you just can't, you get too big, it gets impractical. Envision this paddle, in fact, look at the top one, envision it, if you have too much of a change in water elevation, you're not going to grab anything at the low, and at the top, you're not going to be grabbing, you're going to be grabbing a bunch of water and pulling and discharging water into the trough, which is not what you want to do. So that's one of the limitations of these, is the change in elevation in the basin. Typically there are 4. Historically there have been 8, but we really only need 4 paddles on a paddle wheel skimmer. And so at the end of the day, before I get to that, the reasons why a helical or paddle wheel skimmer versus the more common scum pipes are really, there's really 5 reasons that I can see, and it would be the amount of scum generated, it would be the more continuous skimming is needed, it would be the nature of the scum, and I'll explain that in a second, the nature of the scum itself. It could be a plant preference, or it could be an engineer's preference. So those are some of the reasons why helical or paddle wheel might be employed. Failed to mention, but I will now, paddle wheel skimmers are often used in DAF applications. Dissolved air flotation systems just has become the industry norm, and I think the driving force for that is for DAF, of course. We're trying to, the fine bubbles are raising the scum to the top, so we've got a greater generation of scum, and sometimes that scum gets a little, and this is where I said I'd talk about the characteristics, the scum gets a little crusty, and it can dry, just as it can, by the way, out in the field if it's exposed to the sun a lot. So these paddles kind of bite into the scum and pull the scum up the beach, and it kind of pulls the surface scum towards the paddle each time it does that. So that's why the paddle wheel skimmer versus the helical. The paddle wheel skimmer, by the way, once it grabs that scum, it bites onto that beach, and it's pulling the water up. Anything it's grabbed, it's pulling it up the beach and over the trough. A helical skimmer, down at the bottom here, the advantage it has is it grabs the scum, but as it's pulling it up the beach, the free water has the ability to flow back down into the basin, back down the beach and back into the basin, just because of the helical configuration of the paddles. Real quickly, a plant, Spotlight is a plant in Croton in the Bronx in New York. It was a $3.2 billion project. It started with an $800 million estimate and finished at $3.2 billion. Some of you, the old-timers, might be aware of this, that I guess they say almost every engineer in the country was involved in this project one way or the other. It's underground. That's a golf course on top. I think it's a putting green. And I'm not sure of that, but the whole system is underneath the ground. And we had $2.7 million worth of chain and sprocket type paddle wheel skimmers at this, 48 of them at this application. It was about a 5-year project for us, with Skanska being the contractor and H&S the engineer. So that's, I think, as far as we've got the same general comments on the overview for helical and paddle wheels for the scum pipes. I think one of the fundamental differences, I already mentioned there's just less of a market demand, but another fundamental difference is there are very few competitors out there that provide these helical and paddle wheel skimmers. And so when they do pop up, we have a very good chance of getting a PO for them. So that's about all I've got with the. I want to stick with my time schedule because I know your time is valuable, and but wanted to share with you next subject I'd like to share with you is some of the tools that we've got that can help you out there. As again, I mentioned the drawing library. This is an example of the chain and sprocket type system. This is a project in New Haven, Connecticut, where we provided what you see here, 3 chain and sprocket systems at a very good overage was involved for the rep as well, and they ended up buying 3 of these every 2 years. They bought this system, and if I'm not mistaken, it was about $175 or so for each round. So again, the point here is the drawing library that we've got available is quite extensive. When I'm talking to engineers about how big a diameter pipe they need, this is a 12-inch diameter cross-section view of a rotating scum pipe, 75-degree rotation, 60-degree slots, and we talk about how much room is available for skimming based on the change in water elevation that I was talking about earlier. So we've got one of these for all the different diameter pipes, and we can really, I can get the engineer on here, and we use Join Me just like we are right now, so I can talk it through with your engineer and again, help develop those specs to our best advantage to get the job. Let me see. We've got links. You'll get an email from me that's got all these links, and I'm not going to take your time to go through them. They're all available on our website, but we've got key features video that's the key features for each of the scum pipe systems. We've got our brochure that we provide to you. All of this is kind of a template that what I try to do is make it so you can forward it to your engineer, so it's forwardable for you, minimize your time. But some of these videos are good. They really help understand the scum pipe. They've got one of these. Our key features has our little bit about JMS, our installation list, our references, several drawings, several photographs, master specification, that kind of thing in it. Wanted to let you know our website has been, our marketing team is busy upgrading our website, the rep portal that you all have access to, only our reps have access to, with your password, that has brochures and lots of information in PDF form that's of a good size for you to use, meaning it's not too damn heavy. Some of those things used to be so big, so they've really worked so that they're at the size that works for you, emailing-wise. And also there's a learning center that we started in 2018 that's got videos, information that's just, it's the new wave. Again, I'm preaching to the choir, but for those who use the internet, that's where people are learning so much these days. It's not from the yous and me's, they're pulling it off the internet first. So we've got a learning center that they can go in, and it lets them know about scum pipes and about all of our JMS equipment. And so that's a new feature for y'all and for your customers on our website.